It's incredible that now we can see a war happening in real time through social media and all this sharing of information is incredible, and how all the people are connecting in their wish for it to stop. So I thought we should take these events of real life to do a meditation for it, everything we are practicing day by day, and not just leave it in theory but real practice. So I thought it's important that we not only meditate for the people in Ukraine, but also for the Russians, because it is very common to see people taking the side of the victim and say, let's send them loving kindness, let's wish for their peace, for they to be okay, but then generating a lot of hatred and rejection, aversion towards the invaders. So it is important that we balance it there. And in our meditation, remember, include not only friends and strangers, but the most difficult group, which are enemies or people we reject or we feel upset about their actions, and also feel compassion for them because we realize they are cultivating the causes of their suffering and the suffering of others in a very heavy way. And if you see here, both sides are cultivating very heavy karmic imprints, because both groups are killing each other, and killing is one of the heaviest actions because you're taking the life of a sentient being. So let's do this meditation for all of them and for the world, and try to put our little action there to support peace. And also, sometimes we can't do much. Maybe there's some actions we can take, like sign letters or join groups or join the discussion or sharing information, and maybe that's all we can do. I mean, there's amazing people that are offering, I have a room and it's available for people from Ukraine who want to come, and I will give you food and some money to live in my house. It's really amazing the actions people are taking, but maybe we are too far away to even do something like that. But meditation can reach anywhere, even if just generating a thought or an aspiration or sending a good wish. We're doing a mental action, and it has consequences too. So let's do it, okay? First, a few minutes of calming the mind, and then we go into this meditation. So thank you for joining this meditation. Sometimes we feel that is nothing happening, or it's not real, that we can do something by just visualizing or generating aspiration. But remember always that we create consequences, real effects in the world, not only through our speech and body, but also from the mind. And as the Buddha used to say, the mind is the queen. Everything starts in the mind. So the more we reflect and cultivate this loving kindness, compassion, and wisdom in our minds, and connect from our hearts to other sentient beings, the more potential we will have to do something. And those wishes really have effects, because even if we perceive ourselves as separate from everything else and everybody else, in reality, we're not separate. That distance we perceive is an illusion, and is part of the ignorance we are immersed in, thinking, I am this solitary sentient being isolated from everything in the universe, and therefore I have to fight to get all the good stuff for me, all the benefits for me. And then I have to fight so hard. And that's the problem of all wars, that ignorance at the root of our grasping to a self that exists inherently. But when we meditate, we realize that's just an illusion. We are all interdependent. Our consciousness are not separated from other sentient beings. And that's why we can have an inherence through our prayers, our good wishes, our visualizations and meditations. really we have that potential. There have been even experiments of people joining, thousands of people meditating together in one city and seeing the effects of reduced violence and homicides and problems in the place where the people were meditating. So we really have much more potential than we believe we have. So that's why I wanted us to do this meditation. And also it's very important for our personal path to be able to have an even mind towards all sentient beings, not creating attachment towards those we perceive as friends and victims, not rejection and hatred towards those we perceive as the enemies. We have to find that inclusive loving kindness to all sentient beings in order to become bodhisattvas and Buddhas. So this is also very important for us to do continuously as we hear and get engaged in all this news and communication and information we're constantly receiving about the current war. Any thoughts and comments about your experience during this meditation or questions?
It's interesting when you're talking about, the initial thing, you're kind of thinking of the Ukrainian people and how they're suffering and we're on their side. And then you're thinking of the kind of enemy as the kind of Russian people. But actually, I don't think many people are thinking like that, really, or not that I've met, are thinking that, the Russians are the evil ones that are doing this. Putin, yes. And obviously it's a bit more than him. But I can't imagine that the country, the people as a whole, want war, want the suffering that's going on, or want, the bad things that will happen to them. Unfortunately, of course, the way the military works, it's very hard for the people that actually are involved in the killing and the like. I mean, they can't just decide, oh, we don't like this, I think I'll go home. It's not how it works for people that are in the military, particularly if you're in a really quite austere military like the Russian army. It's they're, I don't know if they're conscripted into it or not, but they can't suddenly decide, oh, I think I'll be off and go home because I don't agree with this. They're stuck with it, and I don't know how they get out of it, really. So no, I can quite easily have sympathy for nearly everybody involved in it. Whether my good wishes are washing over there or not, I don't know. At least they might be helping me and people that I kind of meet. But yes, I do kind of believe there is some kind of general consciousness. But quite how directly it works, I don't know. I mean, really, in any of the wars you can think of and skirmishes, I don't think many people think this group of people are inherently bad and they've decided to attack this. It's almost never the people themselves that have decided to do it. It's whatever ruling parties have managed to get them into it. So, no, I don't really kind of see it as I say us and them. I even mean kind of Ukraine and Russia. We're separate.
Thank you for sharing your experience. I think it's true what you say. Sometimes some of them, like the soldiers, don't have the possibility to do these changes. Like they are kind of immersed in a reality where either they kill or they will be killed or something like very difficult in terms of making a decision. Yet still there are wonderful things happening. I just heard European countries offering these Russian soldiers to quit, and they will give them residence in their country. They will give them 1,000 euros and support. I know that also might be very difficult if they have family in their homes. It's complicated to make such decisions. Yet, when we all together wish for something, it can happen. It can happen in different ways we might not imagine. But maybe their bosses, their leaders, change their mind. Of course, we have to concentrate a lot of these wishes on them, the ones who have the power to stop it, right? And of course, there's many people in Russia, you see them in the social networks saying, why is my government doing this? I don't agree. Yet, still, there is a tendency when you're dominated by a mental affliction saying, oh, the Russians, put a label, the Americans, the Mexicans, the French. We have all these stereotypes, and we tend to put a label on a group of people because of the actions of a few, right? So we have to be careful not to do that. Yeah. Thanks for sharing. Anybody else?
Well, yeah, I mean, I was thinking about like the leaders. Generally, people don't think about, oh, they're under mental afflictions. But, you know, being on the path, it's like, you know, the explosion of afflictions has come out, and kind of in a sense wondering how a person even gets to that point. But but I mean, there's people, well, in the United States who are like that too. So it's not like they're in any one place. They can be anywhere and everywhere. And it's just what their continuing mental habits happen to be. And what, you know, like you said, the 8 worldly concerns, you know, what are they striving for? You know, they're striving for fame and power, and, you know, their greed is overwhelming them. And it's just me being on the path. My heart does go out to them because they don't understand what they're doing to themselves as well as everybody else. I mean, they have their idea of what they want, and they want what they want to happen, but they have no idea about the larger consequences. So yeah, just sending that light out to them as well. I mean, it can be difficult, but they really need it the most to a certain extent.
That's a very good point, because from our perspective, you say, how can they act like that? It's insane. It's crazy. I mean, even if they get power or more territory or more money or whatever they want, that's not going to make them happy. They just want something else, right? And of course, we have to feel that compassion because we understand that that's complete ignorance. And how can we understand it? Because we know we've been dominated by ignorance and by mental afflictions. Maybe to a lower degree. Some of us would never kill or try to be interested in conquering another country. Yet we can understand, because when we are totally angry or we desire and are obsessed with a desire, it seems that thing is going to make us happy. If we just remove the obstacle or get what we want, we are going to be happy and find some kind of fulfillment. It appears like that. That's the ignorance arising in our minds. That's why we need to continuously cultivate wisdom, joined with loving kindness and compassion in our minds. And of course, feel it for them too. It's extremely difficult to understand why. You reminded me of this documentary. It's called The Wisdom of Trauma by Dr. Gabor Mate. It explores his work. And there's a couple of scenes very interesting there, where these compassionate workers come to do a project in jails. And they show you very clearly how a kid that grew up with trauma, feeling rejected, being beaten, being the receiver of so much hatred and isolated, then they grow up and they end up doing a lot of crime and violence towards others because of that trauma. And then our institutions put them in jails, and the punishment is to put them rejected, isolated in these cells. And when these compassionate workers come and make this circle in the courtyard and say, step forward if you were beaten when you were a kid, if you were raped, if you were harmed in any way. And you see how they start, most of them walking into the inner circles, and you see all the pain they did experience when they were children. So you see these big men, they look very tough, but they're bursting into tears, remembering all those sufferings. And then these people help them see that because they grew up with trauma, being dominated by mental afflictions and by trauma was what moved them to do those actions, but that they are not intrinsically bad people. They're just confused. They show you how through compassion and understanding, they are more successful in reintegrating them to society and make them aware that their actions were not right than by punish them.
Mm-hmm.
Then if they just punish them, then they go out of jail and they repeat the same thing, because they, in their experience, they live in a world where the world is attacking them and they feel alienated and rejected. So it's like a chain, how mental afflictions dominate us, to which degrees, right? And it's incredible. We see a lot of politicians, people who are directing countries, they have so much power, and they are totally unbalanced people that have a lot of trauma. They are confused, and it's crazy that we put those people in power, or I don't know.
or happen to wish they weren't in power, but yeah.
Well, thank you.
Had lots of different thoughts. That was a very useful meditation. And yeah, especially that bit about the 8 mundane concerns. Hadn't thought about it like that, but I thought about, mental afflictions being at the root of this, of course, but not the 8 mundane concerns, but of course that's what it is. So that was quite interesting. And sending, loving kindness and compassion to everyone. That's quite challenging, and I guess outside of this kind of circle and the Buddhist worldview, I think, I wouldn't dare, talk. Well, I have talked about it on social media, but, about compassion for everyone. But it's kind of controversial, if I said, send compassion to Putin, I think there'll be an uproar, because that's not, most people would say he's not worthy of compassion. But, I was, as you were guiding us, he did obviously come to mind, at certain points, and I did include him. God, I mean, it's just, it's unbearable to think about it, really.
Something very interesting takes place in our hearts when we open to include the bad guys, the enemies, the people who are harming. It's really difficult, right? But all the spiritual leaders in history have told us, love your enemies. That's key, right? Why they have told us that? Is because if you really understand, down there's a sentient being suffering, has to have suffered a lot in order to be able to do such things. But he's creating so much future suffering, and more if you contemplate the continuity of consciousness after this life. Is so much the suffering he's going to experience that you can feel compassion and sadness for this being that feels so isolated, and how he perceives the world, that he feels it's okay to take the life of thousands of people. Is terrible action and karma he's creating. So we can open our hearts, and the more compassion we feel, the more we are contributing to a society that is understanding, that is loving, and that stops fighting and killing each other, right? So that's the kind of thing we have to promote. Maybe we can't openly say, I feel compassion for Putin. That maybe people won't understand it because they feel it's justified to feel anger and they want to fight and do more war. You have to say it in a way that they can understand that we all feel loving kindness and compassion towards everybody, then there's no war and no fighting, right? If we respect each other. So we have to get there. How? First, cultivating our own minds, our own mental balance, not putting it, projecting out there and saying, those are the bad guys, so let's fight against them because we are the good guys. If you think like that, we are also confused, right? So we all deserve loving kindness and compassion, and we all deserve to be free of suffering. We all deserve to be happy. And that's something we have to keep in mind. So let's continue doing meditation. And the moment you open your heart and you don't feel hatred but compassion for those leaders, you're also getting free of those mental afflictions. Feel peace in your heart, right?
Can I ask, I've got two little questions. It's easy to see from the side of the invaders, how mental afflictions are the source of the suffering. But from the side of the victims, I know about, obviously there's karma, but leaving karma aside, in what way are the mental afflictions the reason that they're suffering? Because they just seem like, obviously, victims. And with karma, you can explain it. But without karma, how can we think about it?
We cannot take karma out of the equation, because karma is what determines that some people experience war and others not. We are in countries where we don't have to experience the Russian invading us. Why? Because of our karma. But that doesn't mean we don't have the karma to experience war and tomorrow somebody invades the country we are in. We might have the seeds, but they might haven't ripened yet. That's why purification of karma is very important. Well, from other perspective, the people that are right now experiencing the suffering, they are perpetuating the cycle if they are confused. So if they feel, oh, these guys are attacking us, let's attack back, right? Of course, that wish is going to arise if you're a normal person, right? Trying to protect your territory, trying to protect your things that you're attached to, trying to protect your country or wherever you feel attacked. So what are you going to do? You're going to fight. But if you see, like right now, Ukrainians are blowing convoys and airplanes. They're also killing Russians. They're also experiencing hatred and injustice, and they feel they're right too. And that is right to kill them because they are invading. They're being dominated by mental afflictions too, and they're cultivating and perpetuating that cycle of suffering. That's why it's so difficult to get out of samsara, this cyclic existence of recurrent problems and mental afflictions, because it's like one thing giving rise again, and then you experience the consequence of those mental afflictions, and then more mental afflictions arise, and then it's like you can't get out of it. The only way to get out is to develop wisdom and compassion and stop perpetuating the cycle. Develop wisdom. So one example comes to mind of the Tibetan people when they were attacked by the Chinese. Many, they were dominated by mental afflictions and wanted to fight, but others used all their spiritual training to transform the situation. Now that's not easy to do. We have examples with Viktor Frankl in the logotherapy, how he said, well, they can take my body and they can harm it, but they cannot take the freedom from my mind and my decision of how I'm going to experience this reality and what I'm going to let my mind be dominated with, how I'm going to react. They cannot take that. My mind is free. So there were many Tibetan lamas that were really tortured. Yet in those moments, they saw it as an opportunity to grow their compassion towards the people that were inflicting these tortures to them. And many of them used the concentration camps as a meditation retreat. And some of them, they achieved great things. Some of them even dissolved their bodies into space because of the great practice they did there. So if we only think we are this life and this body, of course we can be harmed, and it's a very unfair world. But if we come from the bigger perspective that everything we experience is the result of previous causes we cultivated in the past, it's very hard to become responsible for what we are experiencing, more if we're not remembering the causes we created in the past. But if we take that attitude and say, I don't want to perpetuate this cycle, I want to experience love and kindness and compassion, and I'm going to avoid killing because it's a very heavy negative action that will only bring me suffering and being killed multiple times in the future, then I'm going to do whatever is in my hands, even if it's leaving the country and leaving all my possessions that I'm very attached to. But I have to avoid at all costs to harm other sentient beings, because harming other sentient beings is the main cause that we experience suffering again and again in samsara. It's very difficult to understand, but we can hope that they don't create more mental afflictions. But of course, it's very difficult to ask this from them. We don't know how we would react if we were in that circumstance. Maybe we would be completely upset and wanting to kill some soldiers that are attacking us. We don't know how we would react under those circumstances.
But if we watched, like, watching the resistance and the defiance and all that, there's, part of me is just, rejoicing in that they're standing up and they're not being taken over yet, and they're fighting. And I think, oh, well, look at the spirit. But then from what you've just said, in a way, one should be upset about it because they're creating more bad karma as well. So what should they be doing? Should they just give up? Should they, they're offered, like, you see even, women and everyone is given arms and, and I was thinking, what would I do if I was given a weapon? Should I not even take it and just kind of hope for the best rather than, because if I'm given it, then I might use it if someone attacks me. And then, so in a way, should one hope for them not to do it, not to just be defeated then? Or
that's a very difficult question, because we cannot say what they should not do. It's their decision and depending on their understanding. But if we see it from the perspective of the spiritual path, we take the vows not to kill, not to lie, not to harm others. Why we take those vows? Because we're protecting us from suffering in the future by taking those vows. And no matter what they do to me, I hope I don't have to kill somebody ever. From that perspective, if we are the ones attacked, we have to look for other alternatives, anything in which maybe we can protect our possessions, but without going to the extreme of killing. Maybe we can, tie those people and keep them kidnapped a little bit, but feed them, finding an alternative to killing first, and then harming and torturing and all those terrible actions, we have to avoid doing them at all costs. There's where we put into balance the things that are valuable for us. All this idea of nationalism, the love for your country and my people, is coming from the same idea of reifying the self, me, and then my people, my country, and then you and your people and your country. Creating that border in reality is the source of our suffering. Creating those illusory boundaries where I'm over here and you're over there, and then reifying that reality. So that's what we need to dissolve. The attachment and the rejection that come out of that ignorance of believing there's separation. So if you think of your house, maybe we're very attached to our house, each one of us, and we see it as a very wonderful place. And if somebody comes and tries to take my house from me, I'm going to defend it and protect it because it's mine. The whole world agrees that this house is mine. So how much are you willing to protect your house against intruders? Are you willing to kill? Are you willing to fight? What are you willing to do in order to protect that possession you're attached to? Now, a spiritual person, what would they do? We have examples of spiritual leaders like Gandhi doing it with no violence. How do you do that? It's very difficult, right? His option was not killing, but was starving. Now we have other spiritual leaders or spiritual people, not leaders, but people who have cultivated non-attachment. I don't have possessions, like Patrul Rinpoche, great Tibetan master, who didn't accept titles, powers. He was offered everything, wealth, monasteries, be the leader. But he said, no, I decide to be a wandering yogi. My only possession is a bow and a text of the Bodhisattva way of life. He had very few possessions, and he went from one place to another wandering, and he would give teachings when he was asked to give. He wrote wonderful texts. But if somebody comes and say, hey, I'm going to take that cave from you, he probably would say, take it, I give it to you, I'm moving to another place. He had no attachments to a place, to a country, family, friends, or anything. The whole world was his house, all the people was his family, and in that sense, he was continuously practicing and he was teaching all of us how to do it. It's very difficult to become a person like that. I mean, it's not difficult if you determine yourself that that's your path and that's your motivation. That's why in Buddhism, we talk about renunciation, this spirit of emergence, this willingness to do whatever it takes. And it doesn't mean, well, since I'm very spiritual, I'm just going to abandon my house and my kids and my possessions. It's not like that. You know, that's the wrong understanding. It's like, if I have no choice, I prefer to just leave my house and give it to them and have it as an act of generosity, counting in my karma, than killing them. That's where you have a choice. And it's very difficult if you're very attached to your people, to your country, to your home, to your lifestyle. It's very difficult to let go. That's why we train continuously in letting go. That's why we practice generosity, so that we can learn how to let go. The more let go, the more free we are. And incredibly, the karma works in certain mysterious ways that if you just let go and give and give and give away, the more you receive. You see? Because also there is the cause of happiness and receiving is giving away. So we have to let go of all our material attachments and let go of our attachments to our labels of me, mine, my family, my country, my people, my. Let go. The more you let go, the more all the universe is your house and everybody's your family, the more you receive, you know? And the more we work with ourselves to let go, the more we come to the real, more deepest root of suffering, which is the attachment to my body, my mind, and this false sense of I, this little person that lives somewhere inside your body, controlling all your decisions and your body and everything. When you look for that self, that ego that is independent, permanent, and solid, you don't find it. The house of that ego, this body, is constantly changing, and one day it's going to die. And you better start letting go now, right? The more you grasp to preserve it, the more you suffer. Then finally, Kalu Rinpoche has this great phrase saying, the more you realize you are nothing, the more you will understand you are everything. So at the ultimate level, what we really are is the whole universe. Everything that we perceive is arising in the space of our minds, including the war of Ukraine. And that's to go to that understanding, not just intellectually, but experientially. We become Buddhas. There's different levels to work with this, and we have to work with our understanding and what we are able at any given moment or time. That's why we have to train right now that we have a precious human life and we have leisure and opportunity and the conditions to practice. Because when the obstacles come, when the invaders come to your country or somebody comes to take your house, then you're prepared to let go. But we can't ask this from them, not if they haven't met Dharma and the conditions to understand it. That's why we need to feel compassion and empathy.
But to see all those mental afflictions just too painful.
Yeah. But remember that when it becomes too painful, that is overwhelming, is because compassion is going astray. We're reifying that suffering. That's why we need to always put wisdom and compassion together. Yeah, there's a lot of suffering, but from the wisdom perspective, everything is like a dream. Nothing is intrinsically solid as we perceive it. So that's why we can change reality and be all free. Otherwise, we are stuck forever, samsara, cyclic existence. So if you start feeling that the balance is going towards so much sinking and depression because of that compassion you're cultivating, then you have to switch and cultivate empathetic joy for all the good things that are happening and all the people that are doing something, and feel like, yeah, we can change the world, you know? We have to do whatever is in our hands to do it. Well, thank you. I know this is a difficult topic always, but I'm very happy we meditated together. And let's keep sending our wishes and hoping that very soon this war comes to an end. Let's keep doing it. Okay?
We will. Thank you, Alma.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you. Bye-bye.